So for the first example problem, we're going to look at the problem from Catis. It's called the grid. So this is a problem from ICPC USA Southeast USA Regional in 2015. So it's one of the easiest problems from that set. Um, but we are getting to a level where we can solve some of the actual ICPC context problem when we learn BFS. So we are given a grid, n by m grid, where both n and m are no more than 500, and each of the grid cell or square has a digit on it. And what this digit tells you is how many steps you can jump from that cell. So we will start from the top left corner, or this 2 over here. And because the number here is 2, so we can jump 2 steps. And there are 4 possible directions. We can jump to the right, to the left, to the top, or to the bottom, or up and down instead of top or bottom. But if one direction, when we jump, it will jump outside the grid, and that is not valid. So we have to stay within the grid. And also, this doesn't wrap around. So the question asks us to compute the minimum number of moves required to go from the top left corner here to the bottom right corner here. So on the next page, we're going to go through this example in more details. So what's in this picture is actually the shortest path, that to go from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. So the top left corner, we call that 0, 0. So we number the rows from 0 to 4. So this is row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. And we number the 4 columns from 0 to 3. So column 0, 1, 2, 3. So the top left corner is has a coordinate of 0, 0, and the bottom right has a coordinate of 4, 3. So fourth row, third column. So the path is starting from here. Because this is 2, we can jump 2 steps. So if we jump to the right, we can go to here. And here the number is 2, we can again jump 2 steps. If we jump down, we go here. And here is 1, we can go 1 step. If we go left, then we go to here. And we have a 1, so we can go 1 step. If we go up, we go here. And because it's 2, we can go 2 steps, so we can jump to here. And because this is 3, then we can jump 3 steps to the bottom right corner. So this is a path that takes 6 steps. Now, what if we go some other path instead of this one? So for example, starting from this top left corner of 2, we can jump 2 steps down, and then we see a 3. So that means we can jump. We must jump 3 steps. If we either jump up, down, or left, we will be going outside the grid. So the only choice is to jump 3 steps to the right. And then we are landed on this square with also a 3. And at this point, the only way to jump is to jump to the left. So then we are basically stuck in a cycle. So all we can do is jump back and forth between these 2 squares. So that path is not leading us anywhere. So alternatively, if with the first step we go to 2, and then the second step we go to 1, then we have a choice of going up, down, left, or right. If we go up, then we will see a 0. And that means we are stuck there, because we are only allowed to move 0 steps, then we're not going anywhere. So essentially, any cell that has a 0 is sort of a trap. So once you are there, you are stuck there. You cannot get out. And from this 1, if we go to right, we go to this 3, then again we are stuck in this other loop. So this is how this jumping works. And our goal is to compute the shortest path, the length of the shortest path from the top left to the bottom right. So at this point, I encourage you to pause the video and think about how you would solve this problem. Okay, so we're going to solve it using breadth first search. And in fact, we can do the search in one of two directions. We can either go forward or go backward. So if we go backwards, we will start from the bottom right corner, and then we try to compute for every other square what's the minimum number of steps it takes to go from that square to the bottom right corner. So let's move back to look at this picture to see how we will do that. So obviously from here it takes 0 step to go here, so because we are already here. From this square, we know it takes just 1 step to go here, because this square has a value of 1. If we take 1 step to the right, we are done. So similarly, from this square, we know it will take just 1 step down here. So that's because we can jump 3 steps to here. And by scanning through all these cells in here, we can find out which are the cells that take 1 step to go here. And once we are done that, then we can figure out which cells are the ones that it takes 1 step to go to the cells that one of the cells that take 1 step to here, and those will have a minimum. Those will take minimum 2 steps to do that. So that's one way to do it, going backward. The other way is we go forward. So we start from the top left corner, and then we figure out for every other cell what is the minimum number of steps it takes to go from the top left corner to reach that cell, that square. So again, so from here, this cell we take 0 step. We don't need to move. And because this is 2, then we can reach this cell and this cell in a single step. And then, and those are the only 2 cells. And then we can compute which are the cells that it only take 2 steps to reach, and so on and so forth. So a question is, which way would you do? Which way is better? So again, I encourage you to pause and think about it for a bit. Okay, so for this problem, the second way is better. So starting from the beginning and then going forward is better, because looking at each cell, the number of cells we can reach next is easy to compute. There are at most 4 possibilities, going up, down, left, and right. On the other hand, if we try to go backward, for each cell, the number of cells that could potentially reach it is large. So depending on the range of the numbers we have we allow in the grid, so that could be the number of cells that could reach this in 1 step could be very large, and there's no sort of very easy way to find it. We sort of have to look at each cell to decide. So it's better to do it forward for this problem. Okay, so these slides we illustrate how to actually compute it using BFS, and in fact using the Q data structure. So on the first row on the left, I have the illustration of example. On the right, so I have sort of 2 pieces of information. One of them is for each cell, what are the number that are put in the cell. So these are the numbers here. And the other number that are in a parenthesis is the minimum number of steps to go from top left to reach this cell. So for example, here we have 0. That means it takes 0 step to go here. Here we have 1, because just take 1 step to go from the top left, the starting point, top left corner to here. And the bottom right has the number 6, so that means 6 is our answer. So these numbers that are in the parentheses are the ones that are computed. And the way we compute it is sort of using a queue. So for we start by putting the top left corner cell into the queue, and the queue stores the index. So we have 0, 0 in here, and when we process this cell, we take it out from the queue, we process it, we look at it, and we see, oh, this has the value 2. So then we can go either 2 step to the right or 2 step down, and reaches either 0, 2 or 2, 0. And those are the two values that are added to the queue. Um, and those two will, when we add to the queue, we will compute their minimum number of step it takes to reach them is 1, because we can reach the cell just before it in 0 step. So it just takes 0 plus 1 equals 1 step to reach these two. So then after we process this, then the queue would include these two, I guess these are light blue colors, two light blue colored cells. So these two light blue colored cells, they all have distance of 1. And then when we process the first one, when we process 0, 2, so I think that is this node, it has a value of 2. So that means we can jump 2 steps. And jumping 2 steps to the left will go back to the starting cell. And which will mean that there is a way to start at the starting cell and take 2 steps, take 2 jump, and then end back at it. However, we're not doing anything for it, because whatever we can compute based on that will not give us the minimum number of steps to reach this cell. We already know it takes 0 step to reach the starting point. So knowing that we can also reach it by 2 steps is not very meaningful. It's not very useful. So we're not actually do anything. This cell has already been processed. Anytime we discover another path to it, will only be a longer path. We don't need to do anything for it. On the other hand, jumping 2 steps down, we can reach this 2, 2 cell. So this is a new cell, because before we reach here, we have not been here before. So that means it takes the minimum number of 2 steps to reach this cell, and we will put that into the queue, put that node into the queue, and record that information, this value of 2. So I think then we are done with this light blue cell, and the next red blue cell is this one, where we can which has the number 3, so we can jump 3 steps. So then the only feasible jump is to the right. So then that will go to the cell row 2, column 3. So here. So this one is added to the queue, and also this node is marked as 2. So then these two darker blue cells, they have a minimum distance of 2. It takes at least 2 steps to jump from the beginning to them. So then then these all the light blue cells are processed, and then we will take look at the next cell in the queue, which is 2, 2. So here we have a value of 1, so we can go to 4 places. So in my particular implementation, I sort of optimize so that I will not go to any cell with a 0, unless it is the end one. It is the final cell. Because if I go to 0, I got stuck. So I didn't even add that to the queue. So that optimization is not necessary, so you don't have to do it. But because of that, this node is not even in the queue. And also the moving to the right is not considered, because we already have that in the queue with the step of 2. So what this tells me is that there is a length 3 path to go from here to here by jumping to here, to down, and then move 1 right to here, but it's not useful. So then there are 2 other sort of more interesting cells that I can use I can reach from here in 3 steps. So those are the one to the left of this one, so that has a coordinate of 2, 1, row 2, 1, and also the one to the below this, so that has a coordinate of 3, 2. So those 2 will be added to the cell. So if you keep going on like this, and then in the end you will find this last cell, bottom right cell, at distance 6, and then at that point you can stop the search because you know the answer is 6. So that's sort of conceptually how this breadth first search will work. And now we're going to look at the actual Java code to do this. So these code are sort of in this class. There are some statically defined variables. So R and C are number of rows and number of columns, and then I have 2 arrays. A is the input. Dist store distance. So this array stores the value we are computing. So the minimum number of steps it needs to go from top left corner to the current place, current index. And I also have a two sort of static final integer array, which defines the 4 directions. So we're going to see their usage on the next slide, but essentially this 0 will match with this 1. So that means if we add 0 to the x dimension and 1 to the y dimensions, that means I think going down 1 cell. And 0, -1 means going up 1 step. And 1, 0 means going left 1 step. Sorry, going right 1 step. And -1, 0 is going left. So essentially this enumerates the 4 directions. So declaring the array like this will make the code slightly shorter and somewhat less messier. So the rest of this code on this slide are mainly reading the input. So we first read in the number of rows, number of columns, and then we declare the 2 arrays, allocate space for them, and then we loop over for each row. We read in the line of the input representing the data, and then for each corresponding character, we will take the character, subtract by 0. That gives the integer value of that character, and then we initialize the distance array to be integer max value. So the code here does BFS, and it sort of solves the problem. So BFS requires a queue to handle it, and my preference is to use the DEQ data structure, because DEQ, it stands for double-ended queue. So that means you have a queue, but you can add and remove from both ends. So it's just very convenient. So you can use it for a queue, you can use it for stack, you can use it for some combination of them. So it's sort of once you are familiar with the interface for this, then you don't have to sort of know the interface for queue and for stack. So for that reason, I prefer to use DEQ, and DEQ can be implemented using either array DEQ or linked list. I prefer to use a linked list. Basically, I prefer to use array. Basically, I prefer to avoid linked list whenever possible. So the queue, we start by adding the top left cell into the queue, which is index 0, 0. So my queue is defined as each element is a length 2 array, which gives the index. And there's a sort of very good habit of using BFS, or in general this kind of queue-like kind of data structure. Anytime you add something to the queue, you must also update some state information to tell you this has been added, so that you're not going to add it again. So for this problem, that means we update the distance array, so to the appropriate value. So remember, the distance array are initialized to the max value for integer. So here, for the first cell, they initialize that to 0. So essentially, anytime you have adding element to the queue, there should be accompanying statement of changing the state variable to tell you this thing has been added. Okay, so then the main loop, while the queue still have some element, we will extract the first guy from the queue, and then just to make the code a little bit easier to write, I use 2 new variable I and j to represent the index of the element that I just took out from the queue, and then the distance of for the corresponding element, which was stored in the distance array, I put that in a new variable d. So again, this is not absolutely necessary. I think d is just used twice below. So if one want to get rid of that, just directly use dist ij where I use d. That's perfectly fine. So then this k will loop over 4 possible directions. So up, down, left, right. And for each direction, I will update the index using this. So essentially, aij is the number of steps we can jump. So remember, a stores the input. So here I'm just multiplying that by the direction. So this sort of can compute the new position of the particular jump in a sort of I think relatively I guess it's a pretty simple, but I think it's kind of elegant. Um, so after that, the first thing I check is whether I have reached my goal. So if I reach the end goal, the bottom right corner, then I'm done, and I know the number of steps it takes is d plus 1, because when this line gets executed, when this return gets executed, that must be the first time we discovered we can reach the bottom right. So later we will discover other paths, but they will only be the same length or longer, so we can return this. So then after that check, I will need to check whether I need to add this new jump, this new position corresponding with ni nj into the queue. So one thing I need to make sure is that ni and aj are still inside the board. We didn't jump outside the border, so those are these checks are for. And here I also did this checking whether this position is 0, because if it's 0, then that means it's a trap. If we go in there, we're stuck there. So because this is after checking the ending condition, so this is fine. Now, what do we need what else do we need to have it here in order for this to be correct? Okay, so let's first look at what we do inside this if statement. So what we do here is we're going to add this new node, new cell, into the index of the new cell into the queue, so that later we know we'll need to process it. And at the same time, we update the distance to be d plus 1, because the d was the distance to reach the previous cell. So what should we have for the red code here? So I give you, I encourage you to pause and think about it a little bit. Okay, so the red need to check that this cell has not been processed. This cell, we have not already visited it, computed distance, and so on. So yeah, so then this is a condition to check. If the distance has not been updated since we initialized it, then that means we have not reached this one before. Then we need to add it. Otherwise, we should not add this, because that means we already visited this node before. It has already been added to the queue. So again, this check sort of matches with this our pairing of adding to the queue and update distance. So because anytime we update the distance, we also add to the queue, and vice versa. So here, before we decide whether we want to add something to the queue, we have to check the distance, to make sure that we haven't added to the queue earlier. Without this check, the code could run for actually, I'm not absolutely sure whether it will be infinite loop, or at least it will be much longer. It will run timeout when the correct code would be able to handle it correctly. So the other question I have here is whether this part is necessary. So I hope by this point, based on my explanation, you've already seen this is actually not strictly necessary. So without this line, what happens, you will visit a node that has 0 in it, and then what happens is your ni and nj will just simply be equal to I and j, and then that means that this check will prevent you from adding that node again. So then it's just that you visit this node, but this node will not enable you to visit any new node. So the process of adding to the queue and process is a little bit like a no-op. So it just make it a little bit slower. So adding this is just a little bit optimization. Depending on how many zeros there are, this will sort of have a fairly minor impact on the running time of the code. Okay. So to recap for this problem, these are the key points for using BFS to solve a problem. So first, you need a data structure to maintain a state for every cell, everything that you might visit. And oftentimes this is just an array. So when the nodes are easily numbered. So in the context of this problem, it's a two-dimensional array storing the distance. Yeah, so this state is often an integer, but it doesn't have to be. And you need to oftentimes we use a queue, which is initialized to use the first reachable node. So for this problem, it's a single node, the top left. There will be a problem where we want to initialize the queue using multiple nodes because things sort of start from multiple points at the same time. And also the important invariance, this will sort of save your time debugging your code, is remember whenever you add a node to the queue, you update its state to reflect the fact that the node has been added to the queue, has been processed. And then the while loop, the main body of your code is sort of while the queue is not empty, you extract the head, and then you look at all the things that are reachable, you check their state. If they're not already in the queue based on the state information, then you will add them to the queue and then you update their state. So that's pretty much all for sort of a BFS code for solving problems.